It made breaking news locally before reverberating across America's media landscape in the hours and days that followed. Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter Hannah Natanson's home was searched in an unprecedented raid with far-reaching implications. Here's Washington, D.C.'s Fox 5.
New details emerging tonight after FBI agents raid a Washington Post reporter's home in Northern Virginia.
The Justice Department claims it's tied to a case involving leaks of highly classified information. Homa Bash getting to the bottom of this. She's live at the Pentagon tonight with more.
Guys, good evening. We'll start by saying this is unprecedented. FBI agents raiding the home of Hannah Natanson, a Post reporter, seizing 2 laptops, her phone, a Garmin watch. Free speech experts I spoke with say this sends a clear message to journalists that is deeply concerning.
On Wednesday, a federal judge ruled government officials may not examine electronic devices seized from Natanson's home until litigation stemming from the search of her home is settled. Natanson nor the Post was accused of wrongdoing. The search warrant relates to a government contractor who was arrested earlier this month, but many in the media see this case as crossing a dangerous line. Here's CNN Media's reporter, Brian Stelter.
It is not a crime for journalists to receive and report on leaks in the U.S., but it certainly is a sore spot for Trump.
We have leakers all over this place, but a lot of it isn't leaks, a lot of it's just made up by the newspapers.
That was Trump in 2020 during one of his countless tirades against the media. Today's FBI search may be turning words into actions.
It's a tremendous escalation by the administration in their intrusion into the independence of the press. The Justice Department has never executed a search warrant at the home of a reporter in a national security leak case.
Natanson won the Pulitzer Prize as part of the team that covered the Capitol riots for the Washington Post. And again, this search warrant was executed after a Pentagon contractor who was arrested was found to be leaking classified, sensitive military information pertaining to Venezuela. Earlier this month, Natanson was one of 6 reporters writing an exclusive piece on Venezuela, citing secret government documents obtained by the Post. Natanson's involvement, however, is also noteworthy because she's one of the best-sourced reporters in D.C. Recently, she became known as a federal government whisperer. On Christmas Eve, she published an excellent first-person piece saying that her reporting marked her 1,169 news sources and that each day she received dozens and later hundreds of messages. Here's Jen Psaki on MS Now, a former White House press secretary.
Pretty extraordinary step for the federal government to take. Could it be that they wanted to send a message to government officials and employees to scare them away from speaking to journalists? Or worse, could the administration want access to this reporter's devices to identify her sources inside the federal government? Right now, we don't know what information the federal government could gain access to, but we do know this raid was implemented by an administration that has put silencing critics at the top of their agenda. Attorney General Pam Bondi said on X that the warrant was executed, quote, at the request of the Department of War, Pete Hegseth's Defense Department. Yes, that guy. I just want to take a moment to point out the absurdity of that, given that Pete Hegseth himself famously sent sensitive information about an active military operation to a signal chat that included a journalist, and some that included his own wife.
And just a reminder, it's not illegal for a journalist to publish classified information. As Tom Jones wrote on Poynter, this isn't a conservative liberal debate. This isn't about Democrats versus Republicans. This is about the attack on the press, which is a democracy issue that those across the political spectrum should strongly condemn. For more, we can speak to our guest, Marty Baron, former executive editor of the Washington Post. Hello to you, Marty. So many major stories in the United States when this broke, from Venezuela to ICE raids to Greenland, or as Donald Trump sometimes calls it, Iceland. But Marty, do you think this raid got the media attention it deserved?
I think it did get a lot of media attention, and deservedly so. This signaled that there would be no limits to the Trump administration's aggressions against an independent and free press in this country. And this has been an escalation that's started in the first term of Trump's first term, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. This administration is doing everything possible to undermine the economic sustainability of the press, to erode public confidence in the press, and to destroy its legal position as well.
Yeah, and so much of it is concerning about what devices were seized, what information is on those devices. If we believe the DOJ's statement about why this warrant was executed at Nathanson's home, the effect is nonetheless chilling. Was that by design? Runa Sandvik is the former head of information security for the New York Times. She told the Columbia Journalism Review that maybe it was a fishing expedition, quote, masked as an investigation into a specific contractor. The fact that they have now seized the equipment that she used to communicate with like 1,200 different sources, I think is disturbing, end quote. Marty, what do you think is going to come of this?
Well, it's being contested, as you noted, but I do think it's a real possibility that it was a fishing expedition. The administration has told the Washington Post, according to the Post's own reports, that it has already extracted information from all of those electronic devices. It said that it had not yet reviewed the information, but that it had already extracted that information. So that's possibly one goal. Another goal I think that's very important is this is not just an effort to intimidate the press, and I think it definitely is that, but also an effort to intimidate anybody who might provide information to the press and send a scare through the thousands of government employees who are providing information to the Washington Post and many other news organizations. And, you know, this incident really puts the lie to what Trump has been saying since he launched his first campaign in 2015, that this is all fake news, that the press has no sources. This is an implicit acknowledgement, implicit confirmation that the press does have sources. If it didn't have sources, there would be no leak investigation. It has many sources. And this notion of fake news is fake itself.
Yeah, and then I'm wondering also if you think there's any coincidence that this unprecedented search occurred at a newspaper owned by one of Trump's own allies, Jeff Bezos, sort of a way to test the waters, perhaps, do you think?
Well, I don't know if it was specifically targeted at the Post because of the ownership by Jeff Bezos, but I don't think there are any boundaries to what this administration is doing in any arena for that matter. I mean, you just had a report about what ICE is doing. A lot of that goes well beyond what I think are the constitutional restrictions on what the government ought to be doing and can do legally. And I think what it's doing here with regard to the press is a violation of the Constitution as well. The Post is making that case. Another organization I'm on the board of, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, has filed a friend of the court brief supporting the Post, arguing that these are constitutional violations. I think they are. It is legal for a journalist to receive information from anonymous sources, even if the source itself has provided that information illegally themselves. But for the reporter, it's not illegal to receive it, and so not even illegal to publish it. And so we're going well beyond the Constitution here into really dangerous territory.
Right, and I was wondering if you could just balance that for me, because especially for our international viewers, this is difficult. The legal protections for the journalists outlined as you did. How do you contrast that with some of the rollbacks that Attorney General Pam Bondi has made since she's been in office?
Well, as soon as this administration came into office, they rolled back some restrictions on what the Department of Justice could do in terms of seeking documents, phone records, electronic records, emails, all that sort of stuff from journalists. The Biden administration had put in some limitations to that, and that would allow media outlets to actually argue in court that the government was not entitled to emails, phone call records, all of that. And so this administration, under Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice, said it would no longer abide by those guidelines. And so it is just willy-nilly seeking documents and now raiding the home of a journalist. This, in fact, is unprecedented. It's the first time that a journalist's home has been raided, has been searched in the context of a national security investigation. This has never happened in the entire history of the United States.
Right, and it's a good fact to repeat. In the Post's own reporting, they also bring up what could be an X factor here, I suppose, the Espionage Act. Now, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was indicted under the Espionage Act for disclosing classified information. It was never tested, though, because he reached a plea deal. But at the time, First Amendment scholars said his case could set a precedent that could be used against journalists, possibly. Do you think that might come up here?
I suspect so. We'll have to see how this all plays out. I mean, the administration has said that Hannah Natanson is not a target. The Post is not a target. But I don't think anybody can have any confidence in what this Department of Justice and this administration says because they constantly lie. So it's quite possible that they could target the Post, they could target this reporter, and really test whether the Espionage Act of 1917 applies to journalists or not. They endeavored to do that in the case of Julian Assange. As you noted, that case was settled and so was never tested. But it's quite possible that now or at some later date, the Department of Justice could seek to really test whether journalists can be prosecuted under the Espionage Act.
Now, just over 1 year since Trump's been in office, did you ever think you'd see him commit so many attacks and assaults on the independent media in America?
Well, over a year ago, I gave an interview saying he was going to do everything possible to undermine the press. I even listed a couple of other things that he would likely do. So I've anticipated the worst. In some instances, the worst is worse than I expected. But look, this president talked in 2022 at least 2 rallies about his desire to imprison journalists as part of national security investigations. So he has been salivating to put journalists in prison. And what he said at the time is that when those journalists were in prison, they would meet their bride, somebody who was tough, strong, mean. That person would marry them in prison, which meant that, of course, what he was saying is that they would be subject to sexual assault in prison, and when threatened with sexual assault or being already the victim of sexual assault and fearing more, they would reveal their sources at that point. He said that at his rallies to large audiences. They cheered, they applauded, and it's incredible that any human being would say something like that, not to mention a president of the United States. It is grotesque, but that is what he said, and I think that is what he wants. He does want journalists to be put in prison, and I think we will see before the end of this term his effort to incarcerate journalists.
Dark days for press freedom. Marty, thank you so much for your time. Marty Baron, former Washington Post executive editor. And that brings us to our quote of the week, and it comes from The Atlantic's Jonathan Chait, and he writes, quote, "The question that has hung over the Post since Jeff Bezos' heel turn has been whether he is still willing to protect the paper from a president who yearns to subdue it. He could answer the question by speaking out forcefully in defense of his journalists and the right to report on the government without intimidation, or he could continue to remain silent, which, in its own way, is also an answer." That's it for this edition of Scoop. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned to France 24.